Jacqueline has been on my list of women I'd love to interview since we launched this podcast in 2018. And so I was completely thrilled when our diaries finally allowed this magical moment to happen. It was with such admiration that I spoke to Jacqueline, founder of Ann Summers, and had the privilege of hearing her unique story firsthand. Jacqueline's journey is one of absolute female empowerment, of challenging the stereotypes and using her creativity and vision to revolutionize an industry, not just any industry, but the sexual industry that was completely dominated by men. Jacqueline also spoke to me so openly and shared the personal trauma, illness and challenges she's faced while leading her business as CEO. A truly remarkable powerhouse of a woman with huge strength, whilst never losing her ability to think of others.
Bow your head and let your eyelids close on down. Where we're going, you won't need to bring your frown.
I'm Holly Tucker, and welcome to Conversations of Inspiration. Back in 2006, I founded Not on the High Street from my kitchen table, and since then, I've gone on to launch Holly & Co. I'm the UK ambassador of creative small businesses, and I believe that having a business doing what you love is the key to a happy, fulfilled life. My dream is to help everybody start theirs. I'm here to offer advice, inspiration, wisdom, and encouragement. And in my view, the best way to do this is by sharing stories. So I've reached out to my favourite small businesses, entrepreneurs, and those who simply inspire me and asked them to share theirs. Here are my conversations of inspiration. Hello, Jacqueline. It's so wonderful to meet you. It's been an utter dream of mine for a long while now to chat business with you and capture your incredible story for this podcast. It's a shame it's not face to face, but this is the next best thing. We're just over 80 days into lockdown and I'm recording this from my desk, and I was just wondering how you're keeping at the moment.
Well, it's been so surreal, Holly. And by the way, it's a delight to do your podcast as well. So the feeling is mutual. Thank you. The first couple of weeks, I think I was in shock, to be honest. It was, I pride myself in somebody who deals with, crisis very well, but, nothing really prepares you for something like this. I mean, it's in one sense, closing your stores is just horrendous. And I've just been blessed to see that, our web has been performing really, really well. And our party plan channel, which has really evolved more into social selling. I mean, we started pre-lockdown with 4,000 ambassadors, and we are now growing at 1,000 a week. We have 18,000 women who are joining just because they want to supplement the family income. Our products are selling really well, and our new ambassadors are making money and having fun at the same time.
My goodness, that sounds like a dream job, actually, doesn't it? It's amazing to hear that growth. Jacqueline, I always start this podcast with a bit about your backstory and what it was like growing up. Did you have a happy childhood?
Unfortunately, I didn't have a happy childhood. My parents separated when I was 12. I had great challenges with my mother's new boyfriend, eventually husband. I was abused between the age of 12 and 15. And I think I always had this sort of determination that, that financial independence would be my way out. And actually, the problem that I had was not just what I was suffering with him, but also my mother, on the other hand. She was paranoid about life. In one sense, because I have a younger sister as well, in one sense, she sort of wanted to keep us safe at home, and I use inverted commas for that. But on the other hand, and she's passed away now, my sister and I suspect that she also knew what was going on. So it was a very complicated, tragic childhood. But I'm not somebody that likes to be a victim. I see what I went through as, something that shaped me for the person that I am now. And I think that, there may be many listeners out there that have gone through equally tragic experiences that, have made something of their lives. And that can also be, it's that adversity piece really that can help you, prove that you can turn your life around and perhaps inspire other people in the making. So I hope that's what I've been able to do.
Gosh, what a story. And opening up on really the truth of where you began, because you've turned, and we're going to talk about your story, but you've become such an icon for us women. And to hear that that's how you began really is, as you said, it could maybe relate to a lot of listeners out there. It must have felt like it must have been incredibly traumatic to start with. And I'm so sorry for that, that you went through that. And did you leave home? Was that did you sort of escape? Was that the only way that you could almost get out of this situation you found yourself in?
Yeah, I did try and escape a couple of times. No, I went to work at Royal Dalton, actually, and I worked for a very nice lady called Coral Boyce, her name was, and she taught me a lot about retail, and it was a great learning curve for me. I was also had a creative background because I loved art, and I had, visions of doing interior design and that type of thing. But so I temporarily went and worked at Ann Summers for work experience. And it certainly wasn't somewhere where I wanted to stay working because it had a real male-dominated environment. The customers in store, I think they had about 4 sex shops at that time. Only 10% of women would go into the store. But I was invited to a Pippa-Dee party. I don't know if anybody listening will remember Pippa-Dee, but it's sort of a Tupperware style party. But Pippa-Dee was like a closed party. And I remember going to this party in my sort of mustard coloured Mini, driving there and sort of climbing all these stairs to get to this it was in a high rise. And there was all these women squidged together on tiny sofas. And there I was at one point trying to draw a picture of my husband's meat and 2 veg on top of my head was one of the party games. And I was thinking, this is not quite how I imagined my career starting. But it was where I got the idea of doing Ann Summers parties, because the women at this party knew that I was working at Ann Summers and saying, look, why don't you do Ann Summers parties? We want to be able to buy sexy underwear. We want to be able to spice up our sex lives, but, we're too embarrassed to go into a sex shop. And I thought, wow, this is an amazing idea. So I tried a few parties myself. And I think it was the sort of first time women suddenly felt empowered, because I had no men at the party. And there was also this sort of feeling of, hey, I can sort of take a bit of control here in my sex life. So I then took this idea to my all-male board, which, and I was only 21 years old at the time. And, I'd had no previous business training. And I sort of walked into this room of grey-suited men, middle-aged men, I should say. And I just talked through my idea. And obviously I was very passionate about it. And I remember at one point, one member of the board standing up, throwing his pen down on the table and saying, well, this isn't going to work, is it? Women aren't even interested in sex. And I remember thinking, oh, my God, that obviously says a lot more about his sex life than it does about my idea. And respectfully, I carried on. And, I think it was just so alien to them because they'd been so used to this being a male-dominated world. And here I was coming along with something completely radical. And, I was very fortunate that they agreed to, I think they agreed to invest £40,000, which was a lot then, but not enough. And I sort of started using that money to advertise in the London Evening Standard. And then I'd sort of get all my responses in once a week, and then I'd drive up to the Strand Palace Hotel, actually, in London, and talk about my idea to the group of people that would turn up. And it's been a fascinating story. I'm rambling on here, Holly. I don't know if just to keep going.
You know what? I just could listen to your story. It's just been amazing researching you, and I just absolutely love it. And I would say to all the listeners out there, the reason normally you would hear me barely laughing, and I am, but I'm doing it silently because we had a few technical issues. And so I'm not going to interrupt Jacqueline. But it does mean that you might be thinking that I'm not smiling away like a Cheshire cat. I am. She can see me doing it, but I'm just not interrupting her. So I just want to let everyone know, in case you're thinking, gosh, Holly's been very quiet on this one. But Jacqueline, going back to your story, from researching you, it slightly reminded me of my sort of beginnings of Not on the High Street, because, you know, I was this young 20-year-old, blonde hair, trying to sell the idea of Not on the High Street, craft and gifting, which was obviously a very female thing to do. And we would go to London to the VCs, and they were grey-haired men, funny enough, and, you know, in suits, and basically used to delight in telling me that they didn't do the shopping in the household, and has never bought a gift. And I thought, God, those poor wives, or whoever it was, and sort of laughing that, you know, there is no money in what they would call craft. And I think it's really, for any female listening to this podcast, you know, just there, you know, those two examples are amazing examples of when women know they're onto something. You know, we're fantastic consumers, aren't we? And so, you know, you instantly knew this was, yeah, as you said, this gentleman's sex life obviously became very obvious to the board table there and then. But, you know, you knew you were onto something. And tell me, so how did the actual parties get off the ground? So once you had that sign off, were you actually there to do that job, or were you sort of moonlighting and having creative ideas outside of your remit?
Well, no, I mean, I pretty much stopped what I'd previously been doing, payroll and stuff like that, and focused on this, because I started advertising, as I said. I'd go up to the hotel once a week. You know, there was, you know, probably about 25 people in the room. Some would get up and leave as I showed my box of tricks. Some I'd have to ask to leave. So it was a real mixed bag, but it was just amazing. I mean, I remember one couple in particular, two women actually from Chelsea, who just, you know, were bored housewives, and they wanted to earn a bit of money, and they thought this was great fun. And I would just go to their houses, I would train them up, I'd give them their starter kit, and off they'd went. And it was sort of self-propagating. You know, everybody was talking about it and introducing their friends. You know, within less than a year, I had recruited 500 saleswomen, which was quite phenomenal growth. And I had to stop advertising because of all the teething problems I was also having to deal with. But yeah, and then we were growing at sort of 20% a year. And I you know, remember my first year's turnover, I think, was £83,000. And of course, excluding the current environment, at our peak, we were turning over 150 million. So it's been quite an incredible and very colourful journey, should I say.
I can only imagine your journey has been incredibly colourful. Tell me, so am I right in saying this, that your father was part of the business as well, and he used to own, you know, the early Ann Summers shops with this small chain of shops? It basically was a very different sort of vibe, though. Can you just take us back to, take us back to what that vibe of the first Ann Summers shops were?
Well, yes, he did have the first few shops, and the vibe was a sort of raincoat brigade type of vibe.
You became CEO of Ann Summers in 1993, where you opened the first female-friendly Ann Summers shop on the High Street in London. This must have been an absolutely unbelievable point. And I'd love you to tell me, because you've gone from 10%, you know, women, and to the raincoat brigade, as you said, to now this friendly, female-friendly store on the High Street of London.
You know, I'm so proud of our stores today. They really have become a female institution. So where we had 10% of customers being women in those early days. It's now 80%. And actually, we're trying to do what we can to make the guys feel comfortable in coming into the stores. So it's been a real turnaround. And, at the beginning, I was going to every store opening. But am I okay to talk about our Dublin store? Because
yes,
I think
of course.
that's the one that is the most memorable for me, because I had a call from the Dublin Corporation, which is like our council, absolutely saying, we don't want you to open, this is not right for Ireland. And, there was so much pressure. In the end, I invited them over to come and have a tour of our stores and see what we were trying to achieve and how many people we were recruiting and the sort of career journey that they were going on. But they had been sent over on a mission. And I remember that sort of first meeting in the boardroom. I remember at the end of the meeting, one of them saying to me, look, we cannot be held responsible for what might happen to you if you go ahead with this opening. I just thought, this is outrageous. It almost felt like bullying. But I'm sure listeners would forgive me, for feeling nervous when I received a bullet through the post a week before the opening. And that was quite chilling. And there was a lot of negative publicity at the time in Dublin. And I just decided I was going to go ahead and go to the opening anyway. And then I got this call from the Late Late Show, which has got sort of like a cult following out there. And I'd never done any TV before, but I just thought this was perhaps an opportunity for me to tell our side of the story. So I went on the show quite naively in a way. It was a live audience. And then I just sort of told my story and said, look, we've been doing parties in Ireland. They've been hugely successful. We have the sales per head are higher than they are in the UK. We believe that our customers want a store here in Dublin, and we think it will be a great success. And it was just fantastic because a woman at the back of the audience stood up and she's saying, how dare you tell us where we can and can't shop? And it was just incredible. So despite being served a writ actually on the first day of opening, we had 10,000 people through the door. They're all signing our petition. And ironically, it went on to be, it's in our top 3 performing stores in the UK, although we've relocated it now. It's one of our highest performing stores. So it really turned around into a great success story.
That moment must have been, did you feel empowered as if you were the voice of so many women who were silenced?
I mean, this is something that I have felt so passionately about throughout my career. The whole reason I started this was because of those women at that first party saying, we want to be able to buy sexy lingerie. And I just wanted to empower women in the bedroom. That's all I ever wanted to do. And, for years, that's something that I have passionately campaigned, not just women in the bedroom, but also women in the boardroom. We all know, don't we, from, the celebration of 100 years of the suffragettes, of what's been going on in the past 18 months and how suddenly, the world, certainly the UK are listening. But it's not job done. There are still inequalities that frustrate everybody. And, we just need to keep doing that. And I think that Anne Summers has done a great job in empowering women in the bedroom and driving that cultural change. But there are still things to do in other, walks of our life. I look at my 11-year-old daughter and I want her to grow up feeling that she can be whatever she wants to be. In fact, I remember, just digressing a little, when she was 5 years old, I don't really do it so much now, but I used to do a lot of public speaking. And I remember taking her to one of my events, which, as usual, were essentially a male audience. And I just wanted her to see Mummy on stage and think, this is normal. This is not just something men do. And that was quite an important moment for me.
I can really imagine. And I mean, when you started this and you started the sort of the shift from raincoat era to basically an empowering female era, you must have felt quite alone on some of that journey, certainly before you were putting in your own teams, etc., etc. Tell me about that, because it just must have, you must have experienced sexism, you must have experienced really, actually, some of the women listening to this podcast right now, if we think what we've gone through, I now think about what you must have gone through, not only being a female CEO, but actually the genre of your product, the industry that you were in. It must have been tough at the beginning.
It was incredibly tough. And part of that, I think, was a sort of a generation thing. I think, when I look at men of our generation, the younger generation today, they have a totally different attitude to some of the challenges that I faced. And certainly, I mean, there are so many stories, I remember trying to hold a conference in, I think it was somewhere like Coventry, Wolverhampton, somewhere around there. And when they found out who we were, they wouldn't take our business. And, I remember being picked up by a taxi driver, taken to our head office, and him saying, "Well, you're not going in there, are you?" And I said, "Well, yes, I am. Why?" "Well, you know what goes on in there." And I'm like, "No, tell me," and it's like, we're running a business. Although I do think we do probably have much more fun than many businesses in our board meetings, etc. But certainly in the early days, there was, a lot of sexism. I mean, and frankly, Holly, that even today, I mean, I remember being a couple of years ago, I was the keynote speaker at a retail week conference, and some chap who was on after me sort of came over and said, "Look, I've been waiting, an hour and my slides are still not ready." I said, "Excuse me, I'm speaking." Oh, okay. And off he goes. Like, there is, and then the person on after me was Richard Desmond, who some will know as the owner of OK Magazine. And I was waiting in the wings due to come on. And his PA or whoever it was a male assistant, came over to me and said, "Richard still hasn't got his table and he's doing a panel." I'm thinking, I'm waiting in the wings here to go on and speak. And of course, there was a swearing moment, forgive me. FFS, I'm trying to get in the zone and I've got all this rubbish going on just because of this unbelievable stereotyping, which I'm sure there are listeners just as frustrated. It can feel my frustration because, we have to deal with this regularly. And, it's just not good enough. It's not acceptable anymore.
Really, when this all began, I'm thinking about this sort of movement. It was a moment in 1998 where one of your products, the Rampant Rabbit, was featured on Sex and the City, like the best thing ever on TV at the time. And you must have just seen this huge uplift in sales, because I, like most women of our generation, remember watching Sex and the City and feeling so empowered that there were women talking and enjoying sex on TV. And it really was this watershed moment for women. And I was going to say, how things have moved on, but actually you're so right. You just talk about something that happened 2 years ago. There is still such work to be done. What do you think about the future when you think about your 11-year-old daughter? What do you think are the things that you're seeing now that makes you feel that maybe we are on the right path?
I think there's no better time to be a woman, to be honest. I do still think there is more to be done. What I really want to see is I want to see women themselves raise their head above the parapet and actually boldly celebrate their own success, because we need those, great role models like yourself, Holly, out there that are inspiring the next generation. We also need to see women in their own businesses supporting each other. I often say to women, it's not about being the loudest person in the room, which many women can't compete with, but you have to contribute. And I think when we're in those meetings, we need to be supportive of each other to encourage that. For me, it's about recruiting the best and promoting the best person for the job, rather than we must have X number of women on the board. I mean, I have 70% of my board members are women, but we are just not always recognizing that amazing talent. And we really, as business leaders, need to remove the barriers that stop women from being able to return to work, say, after childcare, or to overcome some of those issues. And actually, I think one of the positive things about COVID, if we can find some positive things, is I think it will make us think differently and help shift that forward. And I think it's making businesses realise that we can do things in a different way.
I completely agree. And I think this might be, I mean, I don't want to say anything too dramatic, but I do think that this could be one of the biggest turning points for women in work generally, because someone said to me recently, because it's come down to money and actually earning money and people wanting to have their businesses continue, that the grey-haired men at the top, have suddenly given in to this. People do work from home and they do a fantastic job. And actually, look what's happened. It's paid off. But I do think potentially now that message has come out loud and clear. And will it be that moment that we'll start to see the playing fields levelling up? I don't know.
Well, one of the things I'd like to mention is that I do a board meeting on Teams every morning. And, I'm watching and, somebody's child comes in, little toddler came in to our merchandising director, who's a man. And, I saw him tentatively tend to the child and the child went off again. We're all managing it and there's no raised eyebrows. Like you, I really hope this is a turning point.
Tell me before, I want to talk to you about the high street, but tell me before we move on, I want to pick up when you said women should stand up, be recognised for what they have done. Now, would you agree with me? And when I speak to the small business community, and a lot of them are women, there's just this tendency that you do not want to come across as showing off. And do you think that there's just that natural tendency between women and men and that difference that hasn't actually done us any favors? Because I do feel that sometimes women can be quite harsh on each other. But if we are to stand up and we are to start to become, an example to others, do we need to just take that deep breath and just sort of do it for everybody else? Or do you think it's something that you understand why we feel that we don't want to really be boastful or be out there talking about our achievements?
So I think it's a lot to do with social conditioning. I think we've historically had a tendency to bring our boys up to be brave and our girls up to be perfect. And of course, there is no such thing as perfect. So I do think there is this tendency for women to play down their achievements. And one of the things that I think, can be very helpful, and I remember doing it for myself and I advise other women to do it, is just simply write an email to yourself of all the things that you've ever achieved. And then when you're going into a board meeting, or if you're going to do some networking, or you're going to do something that is out of your comfort zone and you have a wobble, if you can read back all of the things that you've achieved, it's amazing how powerful that is. And I think it's about, a lot of it is about confidence, or that whole imposter syndrome that a lot of women get. But I think that if we realize that, actually we're doing this for other women need to hear what we're doing, because if we tell our stories and how we started at a very young age and the challenges that we faced, that's just amazing for women. They can think, well, gosh, I can do that. For my daughter and for other women out there, I think the more of us that can really find the courage to do that. And it's sort of incredible me saying that we need to find courage to talk about our success, but it's incredibly important.
So I'm going to take your words of advice, because I think, the thing is also, isn't it, Jacqueline, it's about being vulnerable and us telling the truth to other women. That is so important to me. I, for one, find it incredibly uncomfortable to talk about success. I don't want to make other people feel like they haven't succeeded. And I never want to come across as that person. But at the same time, I think, you speak such sense. Unless we start to feel that confidence and actually do it for other people, do it for other women, then maybe we can get over that sense of uncomfortableness.
Yeah, and I actually think the word vulnerable is really key, actually, what you just said. And, the truth is nobody has got where they are without facing challenges. I mean, showing your vulnerabilities and talking openly about some of the difficulties you face it's part of your story.
Oh, gosh, I am so enjoying this. I wish people could see me nodding. I wanted to talk to you about the high street, if I may, because I know in your early years, you faced huge challenges, as we've spoken about, opening these stores. And at your peak, am I right in saying you had about 140 stores? We're going through such a very odd period of life anyway, aren't we? And we're talking today on the day that actually all the shops were reopening up. We're going into a recession, worst in 300 years. Tell me about what you're thinking about that physical store versus online. And have you had thoughts during this time, Jacqueline, about what you think the future of the high street could look like?
Yes. I think what this pandemic has done is it's brought forward, what's probably is inevitable anyway. And certainly I've realised that there's a lot more older people that wouldn't have shopped online, that have been forced to learn how to do that. So there's a lot of my relatives, for example, I know are doing things that they wouldn't have done previously. We've opened up 4 stores today just because we want to be sure that we've got it right, and we want to be sure that our customers are completely safe. And then we'll roll out the rest of our portfolio in the next couple of weeks. The economists are expecting it to be a 15% drop in retail, but then there'll be an increase in the web. I think what's interesting for us, and I think it's, there is an opportunity in these difficult times, and that's finding different ways to do things, is understanding what people really want. And, that's, I was talking to you earlier about the social selling, is that, there's many women that are now starting up their own small businesses, working, because social selling is almost like having a franchise where you can actually work it around your own lifestyle and your own time frame, and you can earn as much as you like. We've got people that are just sort of intending to earn money for this short period of time. But I had women last month that earned £30,000, like something that they have never earned before. I mean, that's incredible income in 1 month through doing social selling for Unsummers. So when people are earning that sort of money, they're not going to want to leave. So it's fantastic for me to see these women, and it's boosting their confidence, and they've never earned money like this before. And suddenly some of them are becoming the breadwinners in the family, so it's gone on beyond supplementing that family income. So for me, that's a great joy to see that. And at the same time, it's another route to market. It's another way for us to market our business. So, there's great opportunities out there, I'm sure.
So actually, in a way, when you think about the high street, and we're sort of, I think it's too early to say as well, isn't it? And I so many entrepreneurs I've spoken to are so incredibly positive about the future because of basically what you're saying. It's the pivoting, it's the changing, it's saying, okay, well, that might not be going so well, but guess what? We've got a 400% increase in our social shopping. It's these amazing things that are coming through that potentially the high street almost needs to work out what it's going to be in the future. But at the same time, we've got to concentrate sometimes on the channels that are working.
I think it's about being agile in this environment. When I say it's looking at what people want, there's two things that we have done recently that I think demonstrates this. One is that, we've all noticed how the planet has changed and how healthier the planet is without us all being out there destroying it as we tended to do in the past. So we launched Knickerbox Planet, which is a brand that we used to have that we've revitalized, which is all sustainable. Packaging is sustainable. So that, for me, is an agile way of responding to this environment. We've also brought out a new brand, really, called My Viv, which, by the way, it stands for My Very Important Vagina. I hope you don't mind me saying that on your podcast. I did actually say it on Lorraine, and I got her to say the word vagina twice, so I'm pretty proud of that. But it's important because, people have gone through challenges. I, for example, have had breast cancer. Nobody told me that was going to affect my sex life. And yet, if you're a guy and you have prostate cancer, the first thing the doctor says is, right, this is going to affect your sex life and this is how. And I think with women, we're embarrassed to say these things because we feel it's trivial. Our sex life, that's trivial. Whether it be going through the menopause or just having a baby or having trauma in years before or any of these struggles that we may have. So we worked with Breast Cancer Now, and we brought out a range that is very much focused on that. It's also sustainable, and it's not just sex toys. There's pelvic floor trainers in there, there's dilators in there, there's, and it's all based on research. And we've built a community online where people can engage and talk with themselves. And these are the things that matter to women. I think it's all about sexual empowerment. It's about female empowerment, and it's about sustainability and making our world a better place. I think if we can tap into those areas as businesses and see what we can do, that's what our customers are really going to engage with. And I think the people that I admire most are those brands that are doing that.
Our mission at Holly & Co is to support creative small businesses through sharing useful, tangible, soulful content all year round. Whether you have your own business already or you're thinking of taking that leap of faith and pursuing your lifelong business dream, I'm here to support you. I know what you're thinking. How can I keep up to date with all this inspiration, Holly? Well, it's simple. Just head over to Instagram and follow @hollytucker and @holly.co so you don't miss a thing. By following these accounts, you'll be the first in line to receive all of my exciting podcast updates, hear my personal thoughts as I share the lessons I've learnt the hard way, and absorb this colourful, amazing, creative community that I shine a light on every single day. And let's not forget, you'll be notified each time I'm hosting an IGTV live, often with special guests, industry experts, or hosting a Q&A with the small business community, answering those business questions you just can't Google. So what are you waiting for? Get following. I can't wait for you to join me. Now, let's get back to our conversation of inspiration. I just wanted to say that, what's unbelievable about talking to you is what you have been through as a woman. And you, not only as a CEO, but a woman who was changing your industry. You mentioned that you had breast cancer. I think am I right in saying you had it twice?
Yes.
And you also lost a child, so sadly, and you went through IVF, and all of this through a time where you were running what was obviously so incredibly important to you. Tell me how you got through these moments, because so many listeners will be listening who have suffered great losses or illness. How have you, though, Jacqueline, got through these points in your life?
Oh, Holly, I sometimes wonder myself, it certainly hasn't been easy. And obviously anybody that's lost a child will know that it's just the worst thing that can ever happen to anybody. I mean, just words do not describe. And you're quite right. Sadly, I lost my son at 8 months old, and a day doesn't go by when I don't think about him. And, I think if you have another child, as obviously, Alfie had Scarlett, his twin sister, I think certainly our children help us cope with things better than perhaps we would if we didn't have them, because I think you find strength to help, your children cope with those tragedies that sort of happen in life. And, the breast cancer, I think, there's no right or wrong way. I think everybody deals with these things differently. With the breast cancer, the both times around, actually, I tended not to share it with people because I'd got my head in quite a positive place, and I didn't want other people's reaction to impact the sort of way I was dealing with it. I was also worried about my staff. I didn't want to create uncertainty in the workplace. That was important to me. I wanted, again, Scarlett to sort of see mummy in a positive way. I have to be honest, was much more difficult the second time around. You sort of find all that energy the first time, but I do think of myself as a bit of a warrior, and I want Scarlett to see that. So I think that's good for her to see. And I think, going back to Alfie, it's what's difficult with Alfie. We're obviously talking 11 years ago now, but it's still painful. And I've dealt with it by keeping his memories alive. And I think that, when it comes to birthdays and Christmas, for example, it's quite bittersweet, because we'll be visiting the graveside one moment, and then in the afternoon we're doing Scarlett's birthday party. But I've always been really, really honest with Scarlett and open, and we've built lots of memories, and we have video footage of the two of them together. We've built this lovely pirate's box with all his sort of memories in there. And there are even times now when Scarlett is sad, usually around bedtime, and we'll sit down and do a prayer. So I think that sometimes if you embrace it, it's part of who we are. It's part of what we've been through. It's part of our life story. And it's part of that vulnerability that we were talking about earlier. Nothing's going to change that. And, much as I'd want to turn the clock back and have a different outcome, we have to work our way through these things. And I feel that the way I've dealt with it is the right way for me, and hopefully some of my words might help others.
You just really are one of the most resilient women I've ever met. And I think that there's something to be said, isn't there, when your resilience and your ability to go through this, you were thinking about others almost first again there. You were thinking about what the staff would think, and you didn't want to upset anything there, and you didn't want to upset Scarlett, and you took that on. You are a warrior. I mean, you are absolutely the definition of that. And I just think, there's such strength within you. Do you think that this strength that you have got and you've had to show is one of those tools that has seen you through what you're saying is 38 years doing this job? Because I sometimes reflect on one of the things I do feel is an absolute necessity when building business or building your dreams is to have strength, loyalty, strength, passion. And would you say that it feels like it's been one of your key, tools in your toolbox through this journey you've gone on?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Resilience, is very important. And that doesn't mean I'm not a sensitive person but I'm very proud of what I've achieved over the years. I would just add one other quality I think that has played a big part in my journey, and that is courage. I think, I have been arrested twice as well. I've taken the government to court when they wouldn't allow us to advertise in job centres. And it does take courage to do those things and deal with those things. But I think if you follow your passion, and that's really what I've always done. I carried on because I thought, no, I know what I'm doing is right. It's about believing in our own integrity in a way, and having faith in our own integrity, and having that courage to pursue what we believe in.
So your beautiful daughter Scarlett, she's now 11, and she must look up to you, as you said. I mean, gosh, what a mum you are. And you've been named, I think, the 16th wealthiest woman in Britain. You've been awarded a CBE for entrepreneurship and social enterprise. For those who can't see you, you look unbelievable. I cannot cope that you're going to be 60. You look absolutely unbelievable. You just are this, you were a hero of mine anyway, and now you're even higher on the pedestal. I want to just ask, it doesn't feel like you're slowing down anytime soon. It feels like your passion for what you do is still there. Tell me about anything else that you feel like you want to achieve.
I mean, I absolutely love what I do. And it's part of who I am. So to retire or give it up, I just don't think I could bring myself to do that. And I think in this environment, who could be slowing down? I mean, everybody is working their socks off, aren't they, just to keep our businesses alive and do what we can to support our customers and our colleagues. So, there won't be any quietening down soon. But, in terms of what I want to do in the future, I mean, female empowerment is something I feel really passionate about. So I would definitely, continue with that. I think there are great opportunities for us internationally, which is something that I would like to pursue. And also doing more to make Ann Summers a sustainable and the whole well-being part of our brand. I think it's about doing more and communicating that and doing what we can and playing our small part in making the world a better place. I knew that was going to be your answer, because I knew that you didn't look like a lady who believed in retirement, just like me. I've pledged to work till I'm 90, Jacqueline. So I'm going to be 90. I'm going to have lots of eccentric glasses and jewelry. That's what my gift to myself would be. But I end all these interviews with the analogy that running your business is often like feeling like you're on an epic roller coaster. And I just wanted to ask you, what would you say in your career has been one of your biggest lows? Undoubtedly, this pandemic. It was closing my stores. It was heartbreaking.
And conversely, the greatest high?
Absolutely. Receiving my CBE from the Queen was just amazing. I mean, just to think of all the things and the challenges I've gone through, to then be recognised for something that means so much to you. As you mentioned, female empowerment, women in business, social enterprise. It just is incredibly special and something I am just so proud to have.
And can I ask, if you had to say any word that springs to mind that you feel has been a friend of yours during this journey, I have a feeling I know what it might be, but what word would spring to mind that you feel has been right by your side?
Courage.
Yeah, because it feels like you are one of the bravest women I've ever interviewed, ever. And to have gone through all that you have gone through, to have done so much for us women. I mean, I don't think we quite realise, if we've been brought up in the Sex and the City sort of landscape and all this sort of thing. And, I go past your in Westfield, your Ann Summers shop, and amazing staff outside. And it's just all so normal. Everything is so normal. And you're the woman that did that for us. And I just can't quite believe that you're going to keep going and building even more, and that you care about the planet and you care about people, and that you're just generally a really, really nice woman. And it's just been such a pleasure to interview you.
Oh, thank you so much, Holly. And likewise, but thank you so much for your lovely words. Thank you.
And so it's this time of the podcast where I hand over to you to read a letter to your younger self. I don't know what it's going to say, but I wanted to thank you in advance, Jacqueline, for sharing a piece of your soul with us today.
Thank you. So I'm doing this as if I am 12 years old. I want you to know everything is going to be okay, and your life will turn around like nothing you could ever imagine. I understand that right now you are living in fear. You are lonely and you have no one to turn to. But believe me, you have so much resilience, courage, and fight in you that you will grow up to achieve great things. Remember the many times you were left in danger and the dread of not knowing what might happen next. There seems no end to your trauma and despair. Even after running away from home, you were brought straight back again. And then there was the comment that you were so plain and unattractive, or when you were told you were so clumsy, you would knock over a pint of beer in the middle of a football pitch. Not to mention the slap around the face when it wasn't your fault. Continually making you feel so worthless. You went through your childhood always believing you were just not good enough. But how wrong you were, and so were they. You are sensitive and kind. You are creative and hardworking. And above all, you are stronger than anyone I know. A true warrior who will go on to inspire so many women who doubt themselves. At just 13, you will design crosswords for 50 pence a time, the start of your entrepreneurial journey. Just a decade later, you will begin to change the culture of this country, liberating women between the sheets, ultimately empowering women in the bedroom as well as the boardroom. You will face many challenges along the way, but every challenge will drive you further to achieving what you believe in. There will be the doubters, but you will prove them wrong. There will be the intimidators, but you will fight back. And there will be those that totally underestimate you and your determination to win through, and you will. You will always do things differently, but it's good to be different. You will always push back, but it's good to challenge. You will always speak up, and it's good to put your stake firmly in the ground. There will be those that don't accept you, but there will be many more who love you for what you do. You are a disruptor and a trailblazer, and I love you for that. But now it is time to love yourself. Believe in yourself. Step outside your comfort zone and follow your purpose. And I will be there waiting for you.
Oh, dearie me. I'm just so sorry you had to go through so much, Jacqueline, actually. I talked to you as such an amazing woman, and I'm sorry that you had to endure what you've had to endure. And, you've been such a lovely woman to me in this interview, and I've heard so many wonderful things about you generally over the years, and you've always been a complete, icon for me. And so I'm sorry that you had to go through so much, but I'm so glad you are who you are. And thank you for your time.
Holly, thank you so much. And if I could just say, when I heard that I had to do that letter, I felt, quite nervous doing it because, I like to be authentic. And I thought, I can't do this without being honest. And I don't think I've ever spoken as candidly to anybody as I have you on this podcast. So, I just want people to know that, yes, it was a terribly difficult time, but you can turn your life around and good things can come from it. And I am somebody who looks forward rather than back. So, and we all have our wobbles about things that have gone on in the past, but, we can change that.
Oh, Maybe you should run the country, Jacqueline.
I'd rather not be doing it now, that's for sure.
Bless you, Jacqueline. You've been a star. And I know every single listener is just whooping in their cars and on their dog walks listening to this. So bless you for doing this. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Holly. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
If you've enjoyed this episode with Jacqueline, I'd love to suggest listening to my conversation with Marcia Kilgore. Marcia is the founder of Beauty Pie, and you can find her interview by searching Conversations of Inspiration wherever you get your podcasts. And if it's helped or inspired you, would you mind rating and reviewing? Your support really does mean the world to me. It helps spread the word and will inspire more people to build a life they love. And for all our latest news, you can sign up to my weekly newsletter, Holly's Desk Notes, over at holly.co.